Hello, everybody. As you can see, I'm not here today, but I wanted to create a little Ed puzzle to review with you the three forms of writing a quadratic. So I'll try to keep it a relatively short video so you can work on your QPC for the rest of class. But I want to go through each one and kind of my rationale. You can see what I type in the calculator, everything. So without further ado, take a look at question one. If I give you a quadratic function, and I give you a vertex and a point. Okay, so now the very first thing that we need to decide here is which form is going to be the best to write the quadratic. Should I do it in vertex form, factored form, or standard form? So if I give you a problem where I have a vertex and a point, every time I give you that vertex, we are going to use vertex form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my formula for vertex form. Okay. And I am going to substitute in the vertex. Now, the vertex, the values for that vertex are always your H and K values. So when I type this in, I'm going to get a y equals a x minus 4 squared plus 3. Again, the values that I've substituted in are the values for the vertex. Now, after I substitute the values of the vertex in, now I can take the values for the extra point that I have. Those are your x and your y values. So my y is 9, my x is 2, and when I plug those in, now I can simplify and solve it for a. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more room here. I'm going to say, okay, I have a 9 equals a times, now 2 minus 4 is a negative 2 squared plus 3. And I can reduce that negative 2 squared. Instead of saying that, negative 2 times negative 2 is going to be a positive 4a plus 3. So now I can subtract the 3. I get a 4a equals 6. Divide by the 4. And I get a. Now, if you use your calculator, I'm going to off to the side here do 6 divided by 4, and that gives me 1.5. Okay, so that means that my equation for this quadratic is going to be a 1.5 parentheses x minus my vertex, so 4, don't forget your squared, plus 3. So if you're given a problem where you have a vertex and a point, I'm going to use vertex form every time. But what happens if you have a problem where you don't know the vertex, right? So let's take a look at example 2. Now in example 2, I want you to see I gave you 3 points, but within those 3 points, negative 2, 0, and 6, 0 are x-intercepts. And when I give you two x-intercepts, we're going to use the second form called factored form, okay? So I'm going to start with my formula, a x minus r1, x minus r2, and I'm going to plug in my x-intercepts. So I get a x. Now it's a negative 2. So if I subtract a negative 2, that's really going to be a plus 2. Remember, we always have the opposite when it comes to those parentheses. Now the other x-intercept is at 6. So I would say x minus 6. So the first step, we're going to plug in those x-intercepts. Now the second step is we have this extra point, this 1 comma negative 8. That is the x and the y value that I'm going to use to solve. So the y value is negative 8. My x value is a 1. Okay, so I have 1 in for both of my x's. Now I'm going to give myself a little room to solve for a. So I'm going to say a negative 8 equals a times 3. And then 1 minus 6 is a negative 5. Now I can multiply that together. So I get a 3 times negative 5 is a negative 15. Now I like to write it as a negative 15a. So I can just divide that negative 15 over to the other side. Now I'm going to, on my calculator, I'm going to do a negative 8 divided by a negative 15. And I get my A value to be a 0.53 repeating, which means the equation for this quadratic is going to be a 0.53 repeating x plus 2. That's my first x-intercept. Remember, my first x-intercept was at negative 2. So I do x plus 2, and then my next x-intercept is going to be x minus 6. And this is the equation for my quadratic in factored form. Now, just once again, why did I use factored form for this problem? Because I didn't know the vertex. None of those points were labeled as a maximum, a minimum, the vertex. All I knew is I had two x-intercepts, negative 2, 0, and 6, 0. And whenever you're given two x-intercepts, we can always use factored form. Okay? Now, the last problem I have here. If you take a look, I have 3 points again, but none of these points are x-intercepts, okay? They're not zeros of my function. I just have 3 random points, and when you're given 3 random points, I am going to use standard form. So we went through these directions in the calculator. I'm going to go through them step by step. So I'm going to start by clicking the stat button at the very top of my screen, or top of my calculator, stat. And then I'm going to go to edit. And I want to type each of these coordinates in one by one. So 4, comma, negative 1. Then I'm going to type in 2, 6. So you can see the x goes in L1, the y goes in L2. And then I have a negative 2, 3. So I want to get those coordinates into my calculator. Now, once I get those coordinates into my calculator, you can click Stat, and I'm going to hit the right arrow key. I want to go to the Calculate menu, and we're going to go down to number 5, Quadratic Regression. And when I press Enter on that, a little menu pops up. Just make sure L1 and L2 are your lists. Go down to the bottom where it says Calculate. And if you calculate, you get the standard form equation, and it gives you the A, B, and C values that it wants you to use. Now, if I'm looking at my calculator, I know that my quadratic equation has to be my A value of a negative 0.708 x squared plus 0.75x plus a 7.3 repeating. Now, again, I got all of those numbers from the A, B, and C values of the calculator. So again, just one more time of how I did it in the calculator. Click Stat, Edit, type in your values, okay, x comma y, x comma y. Then you're going to click Stat, slide over to the Calculate menu. Number 5 is quadratic regression. Press Enter. If you go down to Calculate and you press Enter, it gives you the A, B, and C for that quadratic. Now again, my rationale, why did I use standard form for that problem? Well, because I had 3 points. I didn't know one of them was not labeled the vertex, a max or a min. And then second, I didn't have any x-intercepts, so that's the only thing that it leaves me with. If you have 3 points and you don't know what those 3 points are, we can always just put it into the calculator and find standard form. Okay? Feel free to rewind this video, take a look at any of the problems. So again, an example for vertex form, an example for factored form, and an example for standard form. I hope this helped, and good luck on your QPC for today.